It's in motion.
How's it going, Exiles? My name is Ralph, and today I wanted to talk about the problem of trade in ARPGs, in specific PoE, of course, because I love PoE so much. On the most recent State of Exile podcast, ZenocideGenius and ZiggyD interviewed Chris Wilson about this. Well, they interviewed Chris Wilson, and one of the things they asked him about was trade, and ZiggyD was basically saying he feels that trade is a core part of Path of Exile, and he asked for Chris's opinion on this. And one of the things Chris said in his response was very reminiscent to one of my earlier videos, and it made me think of this problem of trade in ARPGs, this conundrum that I wanted to address here. But for now, look at the clip from the podcast and compare it to my old video, and then we'll get into the issue.
So whenever the topic of trading comes up, myself and I think a lot of community members take the position that trading is an integral part of Path of Exile, like that the game is balanced around it, that the optimal game experience for most people is going to be involving trading in some fashion. I'm curious, but is that your position, like officially at GGG, that you guys designed Path of Exile with the intent of trading being a very core element to it, or is it more trying to push things in the direction of self-found and trading just being one option of how to play?
And so it's very important to us that people can trade, that there is trading in the game. Having said that, there are many drawbacks to having fast and efficient trade in the game. When you're playing through the game, if you have the ability to instantly swap out some item that's not good for your character for one that is, you're seeing a lot more items than someone who isn't engaging with the trade system or does sporadic trading. And that means that the game is a ton easier, and so we have to make it harder, and then it's hard for the people who a lot harder for the people who aren't trading. So the easier we make trading, the bigger the gap between traders and non-traders in the game.
People who engage in the trade will have more currency, will have better gear, and then the game will seem easier. The game will have a different it has a different difficulty curve, and then the game has to get balanced around that.
And that means that the game is a ton easier, and so we have to make it harder. And if we don't balance the game around this, then the power creep that we're seeing just continues at a faster rate.
It's a problem. If you have people, the more efficient trade is, the more you engage in it, the better your character will be, the better your gear will be, the richer you will be in an ARPG.
And there are many people who don't really like to trade often. When we survey players, it may feel like everyone's trading, but honestly it's only a small portion of the player base because most people mindlessly continue to play the game without really engaging with the community or trading. They're the silent masses. And so if we say, amazing trade tools, you could instantly get everything you want for your character, then it will certainly lead to those players having a bit of a rough experience, assuming we balance the game around this. And if we don't balance the game around this, then the power creep that we're seeing just continues at a faster rate. Having said that, there are trade improvements coming because it's a bit cumbersome at the moment. But this is the problem we have here, where we can't just trivialize the trading experience because it will be bad for a group of players who are currently not vocalizing that.
This is me vocalizing my opinion, an opinion that doesn't exactly agree with trade. So the title of the video is The Problem of Trade in ARPGs. So it's a loot-based ARPG. When you get to the end game, the really difficult meat of the game, the good stuff, the hour grinds and maps, that sort of thing. When you get to the end game, you get less and less levels. So your character just becomes a couple of passive points really difference, and your gear. It's all about your gear. It's a loot-based ARPG. Your gear determines your power. It's your synergy between your passive tree and your gear. But once you get to a certain level, you get so few passive points that starts to make less and less difference. Your gear starts to make the biggest difference. And in ARPGs, you are less likely to find items for yourself. You're more likely to find items for other people because you play 1% of builds and you can find items for 99% of builds. That's an issue. Well, it's not an issue necessarily, but it's a conundrum, it's a conflict in trade that you have to get over in the itemization, in the loot sort of grind in an ARPG. You have to address this problem one way or another, or you have to figure about it, right? Because here's what happens. If you make trade super efficient, here's the problem. You're going to find gear for someone else, so you're going to sell it. And they're going to find the gear for you, so they're going to sell it to you. And that's going to happen all the time. You're always going to have access to people's items as long as they make them available to you with efficient trade. And efficient trade only promotes this. So what happens? Like I said, it's a loot-based ARPG, and at the end of the game, it's going to become easier. You're going to get your items faster and faster and faster and faster. You're going to get your items more efficiently. You're going to gear more quickly. And then the game will become easy because your character's strength is going to be based off your gear. This is the problem with trade in ARPGs. And so, what are you saying, Ralph? We just have to remove trade? No, we can't do that. We really can't. Look at premium stash tabs. They're wired into PoE trade. It's monetized now. They couldn't take it away. That would be scandalous. That would be scandalous. We can't take away trade, and it's very efficient right now, and it's dangerously efficient. And, well, okay, let's address one of the other problems. You said the problem or the issue was that you never find gear for yourself. So let's just make it so the game knows how to give you gear that you want. Well, that's Diablo 3. Diablo 3 has smart drops. Diablo 3 also had the auction house. Diablo 3 had incredibly efficient trade, and you only bought your gear to get upgrades. You only bought your gear to get upgrades. So they had to remove the auction house. They had to remove it, and they had to remove the ability to trade entirely. And they have smart drops, and all their gear is programmed to be good for them, to be found for their character's build, because the game is simple enough where they can do that. It's just if you're a barbarian, you'll find a strength piece. PoE, it would be very hard to program something like that, and why would you want to do something like that? Because we still want trade, but it's getting to the point where it's so efficient that it's going to make the game quite easy. Okay, well, let's think about this some more. We can brainstorm some ideas. So the problem is people keep finding gear for other people. So we need to, make it so they have a way to find gear and then, make it good for them. Make gear that they want to find. Crafting. PoE has one of the most beautiful crafting systems in the game. One of the most beautiful crafting systems in the game. The Regal Orbs and the Chaos Orbs and the Exalts and Augs and Transmutes and Alterations. From the ground up, you see these people crafting these full Tier 1 items. And it's an amazing experience. It's so cool. But trade ruins this as well. Why would you craft your own item? Because here's the thing. You're not going to find items for your character, so you have to make items for your character. But guess what? Look at Exalted Orbs, look at Chaos Orbs. Look at the kind of items you can buy with one Chaos Orb nowadays because of trade being so efficient. You can buy 50 life tri-res or something like that, 20% maybe on the resistances. You can buy that for one Chaos. Would you land on that item in one Chaos? No. Would someone else find that item and say, I don't need this, I'm not evasion, and then would they sell it to you for one Chaos? Yeah, because you're going to sell the armor piece to them for one Chaos, and you're going to buy the evasion piece. An Exalted Orb. I've never exalted an item because when I look at my exalt and I think, oh, I'm going to exalt this item, what are the chances I'm going to get an item that I could buy for an exalt that's better? When I look at items that sell for an exalt, that people sell for an exalt, they're better than the chances that I'm going to get the item that's as good as that from this exalt are just crazy, so why would I use the exalt? You could be like, well, that is the risk-reward associated with the interaction. Don't give me that. Because if you were going to exalt an item versus just buying it right there, if you were going to take the risk versus just to take the reward, you don't need the risk. You can just buy it with an exalt. So that's not good enough. That's not a good enough excuse. So what's the point of crafting? What's the point of crafting? Do you know what crafting is nowadays? Do you know what it really is? It's Forsaken Master dailies, and it's trade. You buy an item with life and 2 res, an open suffix or 1 res, and then you craft another resistance on it. And then there's your amazing item. Like, freaking perfect item for endgame. You don't need anything better than that. I bought a ring with like 45 energy shield, like 11% all resistance, and then 2 good resistances on it. And I was like, it was something like 2 chaos, 3 chaos. My mind was blown. And, think about other things that trade affects. Think about it. Your item drops. When you find a piece of gear, when you find anything, because you're constantly wired into this connected network of item drops with efficient trade, everything is just sort of like, I found a pair of 30% movement speed boots, like 2 resistances that were like 35%, like 50 life. Yeah, it's like, they're like 1 chaos or something like that. It's like, okay, those are just 1 chaos. They're not an amazing pair of endgame boots for my Marauder that I might level. And I mean, yeah, I could think about it that way, but how can you with trade? How can you think about your items in that positive way now? Because it's so efficient, you can see everything all the time. Well, Ralph, what do you want to do? Do you want to go back to the Stone Age and take away trade? No, that's the thing. I don't know what to do. It's confusing. It's the problem with loot-based ARPGs. Trade just blows my mind. What are you supposed to do? Force people into the Stone Age, shut down PoE trade, and, kill anyone who tries to start a network like it? No. But then what else are you going to do? Are you going to make trade really, really efficient? So then gearing your character becomes really easy, because as we talked about, you're going to find loot for other people's, and people are going to give you their drops, and you're going to have a super efficient gearing situation. So then you're going to be ahead of the item curve, your character's going to be super, super strong, and then the game's going to become so easy, and then suddenly you're playing an ARPG that doesn't feel like it's worth your time, because it's not the same super hard, difficult game that you fell in love with in closed beta, in open beta, at release, at 1.0. It's not that same game anymore, because you're just gearing super efficiently. You're not crafting with the currency anymore, and then the game just sort of loses what makes it special. That's the problem with trade in loot-based ARPGs. And I don't know what to do about it. And Chris Wilson even says, he lists these big list of problems with trade and how it affects self-found players. And then he's like, oh, but trade improvements are coming. And I'm just like, what? How? They're gonna come? What? What do you mean? You just said this terrifying truth. And he talks about, with Perandus and the acquisition of items in this player expectation situation. And they don't want to do a self-found league because of player expectation. But when you look, Perandus is all about is about the player expectation, and then when they take that away, what's going to happen? He says player retention has increased as people have been able to get more items, and the efficient trade from PoE. I tell you, yes, Perandus has given us a lot of uniques, but the trade improvements have also played an very strong part in making people gear up their characters so easily. I'm playing a character that doesn't even, utilizes a couple uniques, but I was able to gear it up in 10 chaos. And that's all because of PoE trade, and that's all because of this system. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Crafting and divination cards, that's just a whole nother mess. I made that video about trade that I put in the beginning of this video. I made that video, that was the second video I ever recorded, because this issue is so important to me. And I said it here, I don't want the game to lose what makes it special, that same game I fell in love with. I love this game. I love it. I love Path of Exile. I don't need to prove that to anyone, I make videos about it and I love it, and I'm speaking a lot of oh god, everything's wrong, everything's terrible, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing out the problem that is blowing my mind currently, and I have no idea how GGG is going to fix it, how they're going to address it. They've made the best ARPG I've ever played in my life, and I love Path of Exile. I have so much respect for Chris Wilson, and he was amazing on the podcast. And he mentions this huge problem, and then he just kind of kept going, and I was like, but what are you guys going to do to address the problem? And the point of this video is to give a voice to the opinion of people who don't like trade. Maybe the self-founders. And yes, we don't want to shut down trade, but this is just to give a very strong voice, a very good framework for the problem to address the situation at hand. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. This was a long one. I'm very passionate about this issue. Spread the opinion around if you liked it, and thank you so much for watching.